After being gone for months and months, I'm finally back. I've just been really busy and haven't found the time to write any scripts. I do have a couple video ideas in the pipeline, I just haven't even started writing them. Even today, I'm just going off on tangents. I haven't written any of this down. I have a few notes that I'm going to try and build points off of, so I'm expecting this will be a shorter one, just to actually get something out there. So today's video is about how Thomas Astruc is causing dramas in the Miraculous fandom again, but for once I don't actually entirely disagree with him. I know it sounds crazy, but he's been arguing that a few things like character birthday dates don't matter, their star signs, stuff like that, which the show is on a floating timeline, so to a degree I can understand this stuff not mattering. The issue comes about when he is arguing with the fans and being a smartass to them about, oh, this character's birthday is January 1st, this one's January 2nd. Like, I don't hate his point, I hate how he interacts with the fans. One of the big issues at the moment is that he's been saying the characters don't have defined ages, but when the show has literally confirmed the ages multiple times and people are just trying to see if their birthdays have already passed in the soft reboot, you do start to encounter a few issues. Like many semi-serialized shows on kind of floating timelines, the most you might learn about a character is their age. Often you don't get dates and stuff. Sometimes you might not even learn their age, but in this case we already know their ages, so at this point you kind of have to throw in a new one. Say they're still 14, or say they've turned 15. Which, considering Alex has already had her next birthday, it's safe to say Adrian has had his next birthday. Which, speaking of, something that Alex's birthday episode ignored was that it was also Tom and Sabine's anniversary. I mean, yeah, this could fall down to the whole dates don't matter thing, but when you had two events fall on the same date last time, I feel like you should at least be acknowledging that that event should be happening again. And I can understand not giving characters specific birthdays because you want anyone to be able to fit into their shoes. Like in Steven Universe Future, people started to predict when his birthday was just because of, like, the snow and everything, and the date written down on his medical forms. So everyone was saying he'd turned 17 at a certain point, even though the fact he still called himself 16 in the episode where we see his birth date. It got to the point where the storyboarder who wrote that down had to end up saying that it was a mistake. He does not have a birthday. He is specifically not meant to have a birthday. Ages in cartoons is often a big point of contention though, because in Amphibia, Matt Riley originally wanted the characters to be a bit older than they were, so even though he was told to make them younger, he kinda made them do a few things older kids would do, such as learning to drive, because it's a case, again, where you kinda don't want to alienate certain audiences, so you throw in a bit of everything. I haven't had too much of a look at the concept art for that show, but I think it would be funny if the designs were exactly the same, just he said the ages were different. Because apparently Mike Judge did that with Hank Hill. He originally set an age with the design and they were like, oh, we'd like it if he was younger. So he submitted the exact same design, but said he was a different age. And that got accepted, which is crazy. It shows how much the people who run these shows don't actually care about what's happening, more so the buzzwords like ages or like when they're born. Like they didn't care how old Hank Hill looked, or they didn't care what the Calamity Trio was doing. What they cared about was the optics of what age they actually were. Which is why I think not digging into those aspects, especially when you're on a floating timeline, is probably the better move to take. Like, how many first Christmases have Maggie and Stewie had? If they were just babies with undetermined ages, it'd still be weird how many Christmases they've had as babies, but it would be a little less weird than every Christmas being their first Christmas. I had always loved the idea of Miraculous being on a floating timeline anyway, because everyone was always so stressed about what year it took place in and that the technology was evolving too fast. And I did agree with that to a certain extent, because they suddenly went from normal technology to futuristic, but everyone's like, oh my god, they can't have phones like that in 2015. And I'm like, that's the issue you're looking at. Really. But even on a floating timeline, there was still the semblance of time passing, because they were giving specific dates and stuff. Obviously there were times they were acting like years had passed, but around season 3 it got pretty consistent to the point that it had been a few months. So by the time season 4 rolled around, I figured it had been around maybe between 6 or 7 months. There was a certain point where I tried to use holidays to figure out how long it had been, and it ended up being like a 3-year cycle. And I was like, with some of the stuff they said earlier in the show, that could definitely work out. But I figured it was probably safer to stick with my around 6 months guess, especially with how many times in season 3 they referenced that it had only been a few months. And in Felix it had been exactly a year since Emily disappeared. Which then by the time season 5 rolled around, they said multiple times that it had been 9 months since Marinette and Adrian met. So I think my guesses were pretty spot on. I mean, nothing was going to be perfect, but I got pretty close. I mean, yeah, there's the clear passage of time, and I don't think dates matter too much, but why, when you have pre-established dates, are you going to argue with your fans that your characters don't have an age? He's just saying all that really matters is that they're around pre-teen to teen. And if they didn't have ages, who cares? But I just can't get over it. Especially when they made a big deal out of retconning Julica's age to match with Luca's so that they could be twins. If it doesn't really matter now, why would it have mattered back then? I just don't understand why he goes out of his way to make fans of his show pissed off at him. Like, people are obsessed with this show more than they should be for how terrible the writing is sometimes. They make a clear effort to try and get to know more about it, but then, you know, Thomas Astruc sitting behind his computer is complaining that people want to know stuff about his show. Like, I can see both sides. I understand fans wanting to know more. I understand the fact that he doesn't really want to come up with all this random stuff that doesn't really matter all that much, but why argue with them about it? Honestly, with the whole pre-established age thing, I can imagine that they have planned birthday episodes and he's just forgotten when they are, so he's taking a safe guess in saying ages don't matter. Because if something's established, there's no way you can just un-establish it. Which people have been saying it's the new school year, so obviously they'll age eventually, but he's been saying that with the new school system, they're not really in a year. Which I guess is true, because we have seen so many weird things at this new school. Like, we've seen literal toddlers attending classes at certain points. I guess they were more workshops, but the fact that little kids were invited at all when the whole point of this new school is everyone gets to try a little bit of everything, I think the workshops count as classes. And we have seen the younger characters like Mark and Zoe at the school, which they were meant to stay at the old school, although I guess the new school is in the old school's building, so that makes it confusing. And I think we've even sometimes seen them in the same class, which I guess you could argue is proving the point of the ages don't matter all that much, but I think it's just proving the new school system is different. Because again, Manon, a literal 4-year-old, was at one of the cooking workshops or something. Anyway, this is my unscripted mini rant over. I imagine it would probably be a mess. I'm not going to look over it too much because I'm still a bit busy and want to get something out there. I think life is getting back to a sense of normalcy, so there is a chance I'll start writing these video ideas I have, but I also can't promise much. I just hope I can promise it won't take 3 months for me to come back with an unscripted video. Hopefully at most like 2 weeks. 3? Maybe, hopefully. But I should stop rambling and go.